Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Business Time. It is a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. And my name is Kumwembe. In the program today, we look at inflation trends in the recent past as headline inflation eases to 27.7% in May. And also in the program, we look at performance of the tobacco market as the market enters 11th week. We have these and other stories. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome. We start with our main story in the program today. Malawi's headline inflation for May 2025 dropped to 27.7% from 29.2% a month before. Latest consumer price index report indicated as published by the National Statistical Office. The report highlights a notable decline in food inflation, which fell by 3.1 percentage points to 32.7% in May compared to 35.8% in April. Non-food inflation recorded a slight increase, rising to 20% from 19.4% in the previous month. For an account on the trends and other aspects regarding the future, Benedetta Chuandamia has the whole story.
The easing of inflation reflects improved food supply, particularly of maize, which remains a dominant item in the consumer price basket, with food weighted at 53%. As harvest peaked in May, maize prices dropped, reaching a seasonal low of 928 kwacha per kilogram, according to the International Food Policy Research Institute report for maize prices for May. However, despite this seasonal relief, prices of maize are still 57% higher than the same period last year. The May figure marks the third consecutive monthly decline in year-on-year inflation. After starting the year at 28.5% in January, inflation rose to 30.7% in February and remained elevated at 30.5% in March. Since then, it has gradually declined, falling to 29.2% in April and now 27.7% in May. This signals some relief for both policymakers and consumers. On the other hand, non-food inflation recorded a marginal increase, rising to 20% from 19.4%, an indication of lingering pressures in other sectors, likely fueled by foreign exchange shortages and rising input costs. Month-on-month, the national inflation rate stood at 0.6%, with food inflation at 0.2% and non-food inflation at 1.2%. Urban and rural areas saw relatively similar month-to-month inflation trends, though rural non-food inflation was slightly higher at 1.3% compared to 0.9% in urban settings. Economist Veri Nyirongo welcomed the development but warned that the downward trend could be short-lived as Malawi heads into the lean season.
I think, first of all, this is a kind of welcome development when we've seen that the inflation rate has decreased to May to 27.7% in May from 29.2% in April. So this just suggests that the prices are still rising, are still increasing, but they are rising at a decreasing rate compared to the pace which they were increasing last year. So this also just shows that the inflation pressure is start to ease, and this is good news for the household and the policymaker alike. I would say we are not yet out of the woods, but from the consumer point of view, this is good news. So it means now that consumers can have at least an increase in their disposable income. Because if we compare with last year, we saw that the one that was having a lot of pressure on the consumer is prices of food. But now we see, like in this in May, the prices of foodstuffs have started to decrease. While at the same time, we are also seeing a trend or a change. So if we compare with last year, what we can see at the moment, we can see that the pressure now is moving from foodstuff to other non-food prices. So we see that the rate at which the prices of uh, non-food prices like clothing, transport is still high. But if you see that the prices for food stuff is decreasing, so this is quite good news to the consumers. But at the same time, it means like consumers are still spending quite a lot of money on non-food stuff. The seasonal factors has been in play here because if you see that the foodstuff is the price of foodstuffs which has mainly decreased, making the inflation rate of May to probably decrease. So if you check that food inflation has decreased from 32.7% to 35.8%. So this means that there is abundance of food. It's a seasonal kind of factors as well. But it's still the good news as well. At the same time, if you, as I said, the non-food inflation slightly has gone up from 20%, from 19.4 to 20%. So yeah, we might be right to say it's food inflation, but also we can't take away on the policy side. It means that probably there has been some good things that has been happening on their side. Looking forward, I think as in terms of the inflation, I would say we are not yet out of the woods. This is still good news, but there are other factors probably which might possess as a risk factors. For example, we've seen that the global prices of oil is starting to increase. So if the global prices of oil is starting to increase, we might see that probably an increase in fuel or Malawi. So that might also affect the inflation rate as well. Now, as you probably say, this is an election year. So what's probably going to happen is the government will have expansionary monetary policy, meaning spending more money in circulation. That might also be a factor to affect the inflation going forward. But however, at the moment, like I said, if we compare to last year, at least we wouldn't say it has turned around the corner, but this is still good news. If we have to look at the critical factor that affects inflation, food, and then if you look at the food basket, we see that maize contain a huge percentage in that food basket. What the country need to do is, first of all, to stop depending on rain-fed agriculture, make sure that the food is available throughout the year. That will help on the supply side, because if there is plenty of supply, that will help with the prices as well. So it's quite important for the country to probably not stop depending too much on the rain-fed agriculture. I think in the medium term, we've also seen to say another factor that has been affecting the inflation is government borrowing. So the government borrows and spends in the market. So it means there's more money in circulation as well. So maybe the government should consider more as introducing a contractionary monetary policy. Because if there are few money chasing to few goods in the market, it means the inflation will go down. So definitely these are the main things that the government can consider at the moment. And also just to say it's quite important for government to make a priority of addressing the issue of inflation, because this directly hits the disposable income for the consumers. Now, if the consumers doesn't have money, they cannot spend. And if they cannot spend, the business cannot prosper. The business cannot prosper, and it means that the economy cannot grow. So it's quite important to also address this inflation as a priority.
The May numbers are encouraging, but the inflation rate is still well above the Reserve Bank's medium-term target. Therefore, while the current trend is promising, the inflation outlook remains fragile and the real test lies ahead.
Now, Malawi has earned $245.6 million, which is approximately 425 billion kwacha from tobacco sales in the first 10 weeks of the 2025 marketing season. This is according to figures from the Tobacco Commission, TC. So far, the country has sold over 98.4 million kilograms of all types of tobacco at an average price of $2.49 per kilogram. However, both the volume of tobacco sold and the revenue generated so far are lower compared to the same period last year. We have the whole story in this report.
So
So far, the country has sold over 98.4 million kilograms of all types of tobacco at an average price of $2.49 per kilogram. However, both the volume of tobacco sold and the revenue generated so far are lower compared to the same period last year. In 2024, over 100 million kilograms had been sold in the same time frame, generating more than $299 million, 16% higher than this year's earnings at an average price of $2.89 per kilogram. In week 10, the average price is at $2.49, which is 14% lower than the $2.89 recorded during the same period last year. TC spokesperson Teleforest Kumwembe noted that while early weeks of the season saw a significant lag, sales volumes are now beginning to close the gap with last year's figures. According to TC data, burley tobacco continues to dominate the market with over 90.8 million kilograms sold so far, generating more than $221 million at an average price of $2.44 per kilogram. This is 13% less than the $254 million earned from burley sales during the same period last year. Economist Marvin Banda said the price and volume trends reflect market sentiment regarding the quantity and quality of Malawi's tobacco both domestically and internationally. Banda reiterated the call for Malawi to diversify its export base to reduce over-reliance on tobacco and ensure sustainable forex inflows. Last year, Malawi sold approximately 133 million kilograms of tobacco, earning over $400 million.
Remember, you're watching Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. My name is William Kumwembe. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. And my name is William Kumwembe. Moving on with the program. The Minister of Agriculture, Sam Kawale, has admitted there is slow progress in the ongoing tobacco market, saying this is one of the major setbacks in the efforts of pushing an increased output in the industry. He toured Limbi Tobacco Company's factory in Lilongwe, where he discussed the issues, among others, as part of the efforts towards the industry's growth strategy. Kingsley just caught up with Kawale.
It's very slow on how the bales are moving, and that needs to be addressed very quickly. Now, at the moment, most of our farmers have not brought their tobacco to the auction floors because the system is just very slow. What we need to do is to come up with ways to speed up the auction floors in all the 4 markets that we have, so that all the tobacco that is in the village needs to be bought very quickly, because they have kept it at home for a long time. It hasn't come to the market. So for us, what we need to do is to help those farmers bring the tobacco quickly to the auction floor so that it moves very fast. So we've identified quite a number of areas, and the market, the good thing is it has the mechanism to speed up that process. All what we need to do is to work with TC and AHL to put in place that mechanism to speed up the buying and the selling of tobacco. The increase in production of tobacco and other value chains is what we're focusing on. But at the same time, we're also aware of the global demands. We need to be very sensitive to that. Our goal is to have our farmers migrate from subsistence farming to commercial farming, because that helps with quality of the leaf. Now, by migrating from subsistence to commercial farming, that is now addressing the issue of mega farms. Now, our goal is to have all the subsistence farmers migrate to commercial farming and mega farms, so that we can have more production and quality production for our tobacco market. That's why we are providing the financing through the Mega Farm Support Unit, through National Economic Empowerment Fund, for our farmers to transition to mega farms.
Meanwhile, Press Corporation says it wants to venture into primary production a realm it left decades ago and has cited the ongoing structural issues as the major reason for the return. Chief Executive Officer of the conglomerate, Ronald Mangani, said in an interview that there are a number of investment ventures being considered, but has ruled the investment climate as a major drawback. To counter this, the company and other private sector players are working with the government to ease the way into the production area, as he explains to our journalist Kingsley Jas in this interview.
I commend the government for the efforts that it is making towards promoting food security in this country through mega farms and other initiatives. But let me provide one clarification. Press Agriculture is not a subsidiary of Press Corporation. Press Agriculture is a direct subsidiary of Press Trust. The history to that is that there was a time when Press Corporation listed on the London Stock Exchange, and part of the listing requirements was that Press Corporation should not be involved in primary agriculture. As a result of that, the agriculture function, the primary agriculture function, was actually hived off to Press Trust, and therefore Press Agriculture is a subsidiary of Press Trust. We are looking at the possibility of getting into this space in order to make a national contribution, but at the moment as I speak, that is the situation. We are involved in many sectors of the economy, but at the moment one of the sectors where we are focusing in terms of our attention is in the generation of sustainable energy, and therefore we are investing in a solar power plant rather in Nkoma in Lilongwe. It will generate 50 megawatts. We have a power purchase agreement signed with ESCOM, and we are now at a point where we are hoping that we can finalize financial closure in order to move to the next steps of the implementation of that project.
Well, with that story, we've also come to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time. It is a magazine program where we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. On behalf of the entire production team, my name is William Kumwembe. Thank you for watching, but always remember, if it doesn't make money, then it doesn't make sense. Goodbye for now.